Hello, I'm Korschgen and I live in Columbia, Missouri, USA, and I'm the inventor of the box joint jig with flippers and a hive handle jig that are used to make bee boxes. Recently I've developed another jig that complements these two jigs that you can build to make a frame rest in your hive boards. So when we're building hive boxes, we need a 5/8 by 3/8 inch frame rest here on the board, and so I want to show you the jig that will actually make this operation safe and efficient. So this is the frame rest jig. It's basically a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, approximately 7.5 inches wide by 50 inches long, with a dado groove cut into the bottom. So what I want to do first is just demonstrate how this jig works. And so now you have the perfect frame rest. And now you have the beginning of a perfect bee box. This is going to be the base of the jig. And for my table saw, which is a Delta, I want about a 7.5 inch wide by 50 inch piece of 3/4 inch plywood. On the bottom, I've added 3/16 inch by 3/4 by 50 inch strips that will engage the miter gauge slot, and I put end caps on that will engage the edges of the table whenever the base is slid back and forth. So the next operation that you want to do is essentially cut this miter gauge slot. And what you do is put the dado blade down below the table and mark the locations of where you want this dado groove. I wanted a groove that started about 6 inches from this end. This dado groove is going to be 28 inches, and then I have 16 inches here. These measurements are critical, as I will explain later. So once you have this dado groove cut, the next thing you need to do is add a backstop. And I cut down a 2x4 by 1 inch, so I have now a 2.5 by 1.5 inch board. And with the table saw, I cut in a 3/4 by 3/4 inch rabbet. So when you get this piece constructed, then you need to calibrate all of this to the table saw. And the way you do that is to put in a 5/8 inch shim. And so this, what you're trying to do here is subtract 1/8 of an inch, because you have a 3/4 inch dado and you want a 5/8 inch frame rest. So by overlapping this board on the base by 1/8 of an inch, you're going to come out exactly with the desired frame rest dimensions. And you want this 1/8 inch gap along here to be parallel with the baseboard, otherwise you will have a frame rest that is cattywampus on your board. So now all I have to do is put this board onto the base. And you really wouldn't have to, but you can just clamp it in on both ends and screw it down. have a 1/8 inch overlap on your dado blade. So what you need to do is bring your dado blade up 1 1/8 inch so that it will cut a 3/8 inch track on the inside of this board. And the way I did that was to basically bring the dado blade up 1 1/8 inch and drop the board onto it so it engages, and then slide it to the front and to the back. So that gives you a working area of approximately this dimension. So this is where I want to cut the frame rest, right in this area. So to do that, you just add these stops. And these stops are positioned so that they are parallel with the board, and you want to have like a 1/8 inch gap here so that your board will slide in and out of the jig quite easily. Another reason for making the base only 7.5 inches is because I can get my hands in here and pull out the board quite easily. The next thing I want to add is just a strip along here to completely hide the dado groove as a safety measure. And then I want to add a handle. And this is a handle that I just cut from a 2x4. I rounded off the end, and it will make a very convenient handle for applying down pressure and being able to push and pull the jig back and forth across the table. Now I mentioned that the length of this jig is critical as far as I'm concerned, because I'm always concerned about safety. So when you slide the jig back and forth, you basically have it now in a what I would call the home position, slid all the way to the forward, which means that the dado blade is approximately right here, which means it will not, when you slide in a board, you will not engage the dado blade with the edge of the board. So that's very critical.